So you started a sourdough starter. When's it ready to bake though? I'm answering that question on today's Ask Wardee. For links, transcript, and more, visit the show notes at askwardee.tv and look for episode 145. Today's question comes from Sarah S. She says, "Hi Wardee, after listening to your podcast and watching your YouTube videos on sourdough, I've decided to try my hand at it again." Great job, Sarah. Here's my question. I'm on day 3, and while I've only started with a 1/4 cup each of water and organic rye flour, my starter is already bubbling like crazy and is even overflowing my glass pint jar. I've wiped down the outside of the jar, shaken the jar a little to knock down the starter. Am I doing something wrong? It can't be that my starter is strong enough to bake with, right? It's only 3 days old. I've just never had a starter react and grow and become bubbly that fast. I'd love any insight. Sarah. Thanks for your question, Sarah, and because I'm answering it on this episode of Ask Wardee, you're getting a free gift from us, and that's a free ebook and video package, so our team will be in touch to give that to you. Sarah, you're not doing anything wrong. Because you're using rye flour, the new starters are often very bubbly, very active, very overflowing. It's just this kind of magic that happens with a sourdough starter and rye flour. So great job choosing rye and great job on your starter. It sounds like it's doing great. Now it is only 3 days old, so now let's talk about when a sourdough starter is actually ready to bake with. Our general rule of thumb is that you can do easy sourdough recipes when a starter is about 5 days old, and that is after 5 days of good activity and it's had several days of solid activity toward the end of the 5 days. The normal process, and when I say normal, I don't mean all the time because there's always exceptions. But normally when you start a sourdough starter, you have this rush of activity. It may take a day or so to develop, but you have this burst of activity. Then there might be a lull when you're wondering, should I give it up? Is my starter failing? And sadly, a lot of people throw it out at this point. And then after that, you might have the activity pick back up again. And the reason for this is that the organism balance is shifting tremendously. You have the organisms that are abundant on the flour, and in the right environment, they're starting to thrive, but some proliferate and some don't. So then it's this dance and this back and forth until they establish themselves as a strong sourdough starter colony of beneficial organisms at the end of making the starter process. So you got to see it through, and that's what you're doing, and you're seeing that great activity kind of in the middle of the process. So this is why we say a 5-day-old starter that's had 1 or 2 days toward the end of solid good activity is ready to use in easy baking. Now what do I mean by good activity? Well, I mean lots of bubbles. I mean the starter is doming on top. It might be doubling in size or more, but that really depends on the flour and thickness of the starter. So basically you're just looking for rising as a telltale sign. It smells fresh and sour. It's probably producing hooch after it runs out of food prior to a feeding. And hooch is that acidic yellowy liquid that pools around the sides of the starter and on top of the starter. So all these are good signs of an active starter. And when a starter is 5 or 6 days old, you want it to have a couple days of that solid activity before you know it's ready to use in easy recipes. What are the easy recipes? Well, we're talking about recipes where a strong leavening action is not yet required from the sourdough starter. It'll give you the nutritional benefits, but your recipe doesn't need strong leavening. And so we're talking recipes like our sourdough English muffins, pancakes, waffles, crackers, pizza crust, those kind of recipes. Whereas on the other hand, breads, sandwich loaves, for example, they need strong leavening action. So you want to use a starter that's like, 3 weeks old of good solid activity, so you know that that strong organism balance is established and it's strong enough and mature enough to raise bread dough. Bread that you want to be like a sandwich loaf. An exception in the bread category is our no-knead sourdough Einkorn Artisan loaf. And that recipe you can make with a week-old starter because it doesn't need strong leavening power, and it's a wonderful, wonderful recipe. So if you, Sarah, or anyone watching or listening to this doesn't have that recipe already, you can get it at tradcookschool.com/no-knead, N-O-K-N-E-A-D, all one word, no-knead. Submit your email address and I'll send the recipe right to you. And the download that includes the recipe also includes instructions for how to start your own sourdough starter. So if you don't already have one, then you'll get those instructions too. So bottom line, a starter that's 5 or so days old where you've had a couple days of good solid activity, use it in easy recipes. A starter that's fairly new can be used in our no-knead sourdough einkorn bread recipe. Save those other bread recipes that require strong leavening for a starter that's more mature and established, so 3 weeks and on. Great job on your sourdough starter, Sarah. I hope that you're already reaping the benefits and enjoying the rewards and enjoying the delicious sourdough breads and baked goods that are coming out of your kitchen. It's so exciting. Thanks for joining me, everyone. I hope you'll join me again next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Ask Wardee. And for the current episodes, show notes, links, transcript, and more, go to askwardee.tv, look for episode 145, or browse the archives for all the past episodes. Thanks for joining me. God bless you. Bye-bye.